How do you deal with those feelings? The ones that everyone has but no one says. The ones that may be too petty and controversial to voice out loud. The ones that people come at you for expressing, though they may feel or think the same. Feelings which you know will impact your decisions and actions in future, rightly or wrongly. Let me tell you a story. Something happened, and for a long time, I was left feeling betrayed by the people I expected a bit more from. In the moment that the incident happened, I tried to suppress its effect on me to the point of numbness. But trust me, way after that experience, I would woefully revisit that day, and before I knew it, I had made some blanket conclusions on the state of humanity, which rang very true in my universe. Number 1. Humans are ungrateful opportunists who only look out for themselves and won't mind leaving you in distress as long as their own convenience isn't disrupted. Number 2. They would only help, if at all, to the point they consider reasonably beneficial to themselves. Once that point has been crossed, they can't be bothered about whether you go to hell or not. There might have been some elements of truth in my generalizing conclusions, but I was coming from a very cynical angle. It wasn't until I sat with myself and considered why I had grown cynical and tried to put myself in the shoes of the other party that I started to wonder whether there was something I was missing. I sat alone with my feelings for a long time. But since we're talking about thoughts and feelings that may make you start to look some kind of way in other people's eyes, well, let's get vulnerable, because upon reflection, I started to see that how the others reacted was simply human. The rudest awakening was not just having to see my self-entitlement for what it was, but also to accept that I was more than guilty of the actions I harshly criticized them for, or similar. So what exactly happened, you may ask? Let me tell you. But before that, my dear friends, my name is Lady K, and you are in K's Corner. Here, we talk about all the tiny experiences we have that make up this life with all its flaws and nuances. And here, we name the experiences and how they impact our lives, for better or worse. So let's build a community where we all learn from each other, because some things, thoughts, feelings, experiences, may lead to certain outcomes if we are not intentional about how we deal with them during and even after their occurrence. And for those of us who may not have had said experiences, if you know how others have handled a situation you may not have encountered, emotionally or otherwise, you may get to equip yourself to figure out how you may or may not want to act or react before you land in a similar situation. Because knowledge, they say, is power. So where was I? Yes. That experience that had me thinking thoughts that would definitely have cancelled my character in the minds of anyone who thought I was a nice person. Here's the story. It happened when I did my semester abroad on the beautiful French Riviera in the southern part of France. The French Riviera, or Côte d'Azur, is the Mediterranean coastline of southeastern France, known for its glamorous beach resorts like Cannes and Saint-Tropez, the independent microstate of Monaco, the picturesque coastal towns. This region offers a blend of natural beauty, with its azure waters and mountainous landscapes, and rich culture featuring historic villages, vineyards, and vibrant festivals such as the Cannes Film Festival and the Monaco Grand Prix. The coast stretches from the east of Marseille to the Italian border at Menton. Because I am such a lover of adventure, I grabbed every opportunity I could to explore the city in which I lived, making certain to travel around while practicing my French with friends, strangers, policemen, the kind of people you usually practice language with, and gaining invaluable intercultural experiences as I studied. At the time, the panini restrictions were slowly being relaxed in many countries. The panini that swept over the world between 2020 and 2023. So to boost movement and mobility within and about, some of the cities of the French Riviera, individually and collectively, offered unbeatable deals to students up to the age of and including 25 for exactly the 4 months I spent there. Regional tickets for free, almost all museums for free, many intertown bus rides for free, like the one straight to Monaco, generally very affordable transportation costs per month, and much, much more. To top it all, my curriculum was set such that for the entirety of my time in southern France, I always had 2 weeks of lectures and then 2 weeks of free time alternating. Now, if that wasn't the life, then I don't know. One of these adventures took me to the glamorous coastal town of Saint-Tropez, the destination that became known to house and host some very, very rich stars and celebrities of the past and current centuries. After being catapulted into global fame by some movies mid-last century, the allure of the town, formerly a little fishing town, only rose, making it synonymous with everything glamour and luxury. Knowing that I'd be more vacationing than studying on the French Riviera, I definitely had Saint-Tropez on my radar. So when 3 acquaintances I met during one of my courses invited me to join them on their trip to Saint-Tropez, they didn't have to ask twice. I was in. Planning didn't take much, as we simply had to agree on a day, time, and meeting spots to embark on the journey. On the day of the trip, we took the regional train from our city to a transit stop called Saint-Raphaël, and from there, boarded a bus straight to the long-anticipated Saint-Tropez. The journey in itself was an experience. The scenery, both from the train as well as the bus, was breathtaking. We saw the ancient and dramatic red rock formations of the Esterel coastline, other rock carvings in different shapes and sizes towering above us, mountain chains with fluffy clouds and a clear blue sky as the backdrop, valleys and fields in full bloom, the sea, calm and glistening, shimmering in the light of the sun, picturesque coastal views with charming towns and villages beautifully incorporated into the geography of the locations, gorgeous stretches of the Mediterranean coastline, especially the part around Cap d'Antibes, the stunning, glamorous harbor of Saint-Tropez itself. It was almost too bad when we finally arrived at our destination. It all sounds so beautiful, but by now you must be wondering what at all happened that left such a bad taste in my mouth that it forced some life lessons into me. It was that occurrence that single-handedly prevented me from fully immersing myself into the Saint-Tropez experience and enjoying it as much as I could have. I lost my phone! Wait, are you disappointed? Maybe you are, because after all that build-up, you were probably expecting something dramatic, or at the very least, not this. Especially in the context of an event that had me doubting the humanity of the human race. However, to me, at that moment, this was a major, heaven-shaking crisis. And spoiler alert, my phone story did not have a happy end. How and where I lost it? To this day, I still don't know. But I bet that if I knew, I would have had a better chance of finding it, or knowing from the onset that a search was futile. Let me tell you how we got here. That bright and sunny morning, when I left my apartment and got onto the train with the others, my phone was on me. I know this because when our tickets were checked, I showed my e-ticket which was on my phone. However, somewhere along the line I must have tossed it aside since we were in a group and very much engrossed in our conversation. You see, I'm generally not someone who's glued to their phone, most definitely not whilst I'm engaging with people. But instead of safely tucking it into my backpack as I usually did, maybe... Retrospectively, that train ride was probably the beginning of the end for my phone, because if I lost it on the train, it probably is still there to this day if no one has taken it. But let's not get ahead of the story. When we transitioned at Saint-Raphaël, we had quite a bit of time until our connecting bus departed to Saint-Tropez. So we strolled around the area, explored the open marketplace, went to the beachside and just enjoyed the peace and calm, chatting and laughing along the way. At some point, one of the girls lost her phone and we all helped her search. It was I, though, who found it under one of the tables at the open market. It had somehow fallen there, but nonetheless, we were glad when after that short stress episode, she finally had a phone in her hands. But alas, how was I to know at the time that the one helping another person in need was also very much in need of help herself and just didn't know it yet? Nevertheless, that phone saga made us famished. We decided to treat ourselves to breakfast French style and went to a quaint beachside patisserie where we had some of the best chocolate croissants we had ever tried. As we had just about finished our treat, one of us asked how much time we had until our departure, and that's when I reached for my phone. You know the heart attack feeling that arises within you when you're frantically searching for something you know you put in a specific place only to find that it's nowhere to be found? The growing sense of dread that rises from the pit of your stomach and into your throat when reason rears its head before hope sets in and it hits you that whatever it is you're looking for is gone. Or maybe was never there in the first place. I don't know. Then it dawned on me that after showing the ticket inspector my e-ticket at the beginning of the journey, I hadn't seen my phone since, and I most definitely did not remember taking it along with me as I alighted. But maybe by some chance I still put it in my bag before I left the train, that's what I usually did. Hopeful reasoning and final realization fought for the upper hand in my mind as I groped in my bag and around me for the phone. It had to be somewhere. But as hope gave way to frustration, I became angry. Hadn't I helped one of the girls find her phone? How come now I was the one with the missing phone? The thought of having lost my phone in unfamiliar territory with hardly any options of conveniently getting another SIM card with my number really didn't help. Of course, there was the option of getting a new phone, but I don't need to tell you that nowadays our lives are largely lived on our phones. Even if, like me, you're not glued to your phone in your daily life, during traveling and the associated connecting with others, our phones may be indispensable. So in my situation, all important details I needed as a traveler in another country were on my phone. Forget things which held personal value like pictures, memories, and notes. These I had for the most part saved in the cloud and could retrieve as soon as I got a new phone, even without a SIM card. But my Panini passport was on my phone. I had details and data that couldn't just be synchronized upon the purchase of a new phone. My email account, WhatsApp, or any app that had my phone number as a recovery option, as well as information linked to my SIM card, could not just be set up on a new phone. I was lucky I had already synchronized some apps like my email and WhatsApp on my laptop. Otherwise, contacting anyone at all would have been a nightmare. I actually made some people angry at me because I bailed out on them, you see. Well, on a side note, this may sound like a joke, but I actually contacted my phone service provider with a friend's phone and asked whether they could send me a new SIM number with my old number. I was willing to pay for delivery and all to France because normally that service was free for customers. But they said no, that wasn't part of their offering and would pose an inconvenience. So basically, I was on my own. But let's not get ahead of ourselves here. We were still at the patisserie and I was still fumbling for my phone, hoping it would appear out of some crevice in my bag. But it didn't. That is when I asked my travel companions to check around them. But of course it was nowhere to be found. Otherwise I wouldn't be telling you the story. One of us suggested retracing our steps as we looked and asked around to see whether we would find the phone. The atmosphere in the patisserie changed from peaceful and calm to hectic. So that was the end of our relaxed breakfast. We quickly got up and left the patisserie to search for my lost piece of technology, going to all our previous stops and finally arriving at the train station of San Rafael. When we had first arrived there that morning, we knew we'd definitely come to get the bus to our final destination there. Only we had imagined our last moments in this peaceful town to be different. Well, at the train station, we went straight to customer service. By this point, the search had taken up a considerable amount of time, So we didn't have much time to wrap everything up and get onto the bus to Saint-Tropez. And I still hadn't found my phone. My heart was racing, my stress levels were up. Suffice it to say, I had become quite desperate at that point because I had to find that gadget, a task that was starting to feel impossible. In the office, we quickly spotted 2 customer service workers and went to them. But could you even call them that? They were grossly absorbed in a conversation as we approached, and from the look on their faces, were not at all pleased to be interrupted, especially, as they found out soon enough, by a bunch of foreigners whose French was not in the best shape. Consequently, I shouldn't have been surprised when, after telling them of my plight in my half French, one just shrugged and in French said something along the lines of, "Well, forget it, you won't find the phone. It's probably been stolen by now and there's nothing we can do to help." My hope dwindled with every word. It hurt enough to have to accept reality, but seriously, the lack of empathy or tact whatsoever dealt the last blow. So there I stood, the nonchalant God bricks already turning towards each other to continue that important conversation which we had rudely interrupted. I wasn't even angry, just stunned. At the same time, I felt so, lost, empty, unfairly treated. It was as though the ground had been ripped from under my feet, as the last bit of hope I was holding on to was yanked from my grasp. As if I was in some kind of trouble I didn't yet fully grasp. Needless to say, the reality finally sinking in was a rude awakening I wasn't yet ready for. The feeling of relief I thought I'd have when I finally found what I was looking for never materialized, and that realization splashed into my face like a bucket of ice water in winter. So very much flabbergasted by the blatant disregard and disinterest displayed by the customer service, the 4 of us simply stood in the office staring blankly at the officers and then at each other. We were on our own. This wasn't how we'd imagined things to pan out. At this point, we were confused as to what the next step would be. We. And there and then, looking into the faces of my travel companions, a realization struck me like a bolt of lightning. I was on my own. This wasn't how I had imagined things to pan out. At this point, I was confused as to what the next steps would be. I hadn't realized this, but I was the only one feeling what I was feeling. I had assumed up until then that since we were searching together, we were all in this together and equally invested in finding my phone. It had hit me that though the others had tried to help as much as they could, but nothing seemed to come out of it, they were ready to move on with their day, with their trip, with their plans. Thus, upon looking into the face of my travel companions, it stung indeed, as for the first time since we started searching for the phone, I saw their expressions. These were the expressions of people who were frustrated, but not for the same reason as I was. They felt held up in a place they didn't ask to be, and although no one said anything to suggest being bothered, I could sense that for them, this had dragged out long enough. And since I had helped one of the 3 friends find their phone, now that I was in the same bind, who wanted to be the bad guy here and suggest ditching the phone rescue mission to continue the trip? The girl I helped? So with this newfound awareness, despite wanting to search a bit more, even if the rational part of me had already come to the conclusion that this was an exercise in futility, and because this was a trip the others had looked forward to for so long, I made a decision. I wasn't about to let our adventure fall into the sea at San Rafael right before their eyes because of someone they added to the trip last minute. Because at that moment, it dawned on me that if I didn't say anything and we missed the bus to Saint-Tropez, which was now coming in less than 10 minutes, they might low-key resent me, and this whole trip, or the lack thereof, might turn out to be a story they'd carry with them about why not to add people to your group for a trip last minute, no matter how cute they might seem in the beginning. They tell the tale of how a whole trip was cancelled because they had to spend their time looking for a lost phone, which held no significance to them. So, with us still standing in the office like unclaimed packages, I said something like, Guys, this is leading nowhere. We have to leave now if we want to get this bus because the next one departs about 3 hours after this one. After producing my heroic speech, you'd think I was prepared to see the speed and willingness with which they agreed. One quickly said, "Yes, you're right. We really need to hurry up." Another chimed in, "Yes, the bus is coming like now. So if we don't leave right away, there's no way we'll make it." And finally, the last declared, already walking towards the door, "Yeah, so let's go, guys. Waiting 3 hours just isn't worth it. We might as well just go home if we miss this bus." You know when you suggest something to people so that you don't seem selfish or as though you want to inconvenience others, half hoping that they would shoot down that suggestion, only to find out that they were practically waiting to be handed a way out of that situation? That was my situation then. But without much time to process my thoughts properly, we quickly shuffled out of the office and headed straight to the adjoining bus station. There, we hopped onto the bus as it was gearing up for departure, and off we went. On the bus, I chatted happily with my travel pals, or so it appeared, and interacted with other passengers going their own way, talking about life, the scenery, the beauty of youth, and the opportunities we had. There seemed to be a lot going on for us. We finally arrived after about an hour-long bus ride, and man, just saying that Saint-Tropez was beautiful would probably have been an understatement. If the scenery on the way here was breathtaking, then the destination was nothing short of magnificent. We promenaded around the town, absorbing the beauty, elegance, and glamour around us as we talked about the importance of this world-renowned place we had finally treaded on with our feet. It felt so surreal. We checked out the famous spots, went to their harbor filled with luxury yachts, strolled along the famous Pampelon beach, checked out some of the upscale boutiques, and visited an exquisite little cafe. It was a one-of-a-kind cafe that had the setup of a one-stop shop for everything homely. There were books, comfortable couches and pillows, unique artwork, and generally the air of home. We talked with the older lady in charge at length as she shared some life experiences with us and vice versa. She even put some of what we bought on the house, which was really sweet. After that very comfortable moment, we were fired up for the cherry on the cake of our trip. We strolled through the streets that housed the massive villas for the rich and famous that this place is very much known for. The landscaping alone was impressive. We saw opulence and extravagance. This whole place literally reeked of wealth. These massive edifices that half the time in the year stand empty usually serve as a second or third or more residences for old money generations, but are maintained with such delicate care. We walked to the top of a cliff-like structure that granted us a panorama view of Saint-Tropez. The villas, old town, harbor, shimmering sea below, and a majestic mountain formation towering in the horizon. The allure of this beautiful town was very real. But alas, all good things must come to an end, and all too soon we had to return home. This time first with the bus and then with the train. It felt almost unfortunate. I sure hope you could feel a bit of the charm of Saint-Tropez as I walked you through that amazing experience. But at this point you must be a bit confused and wondering what the point of all this is. Yeah, you get that I lost my phone, and yeah, I was sad and may have wished at first that the others had gotten my back a bit more. But what of it? What does this have to do with humanity? You see, after we left San Rafael, part of my mind checked out. The whole trip seemed to pass by me, as if I were a bystander observing someone with my face having this experience. Thus, I could suppress the undercurrent of sadness just beneath the surface. And the thing is, though I didn't expect the loss of my phone to be omnipresent in the minds of those I was with, in my mind I did expect some form of empathy or consideration for my situation, as losing a phone under such circumstances, as foreigners in a country and far away from our familiar base, was quite the unnerving ordeal. I was grateful that I wasn't alone because the situation would have been much worse. However, some comments made and questions asked, like asking me to check the time on my phone or stating that I could look up more information on this or that on my phone if I desired to know more of this and that, only served as a reminder that my problem was mine and mine alone. The others, including the one who almost lost her phone that I found, had already moved on. In fact, it was never their problem to begin with, only something they had been roped into because they happened to be around at that time. Recognizing this came with a bitter aftertaste. Let me be clear here. I am not implying that the whole trip should have been cancelled to look for my phone. After all, those around me did all they could, even though deep down we all knew, even before anyone had said anything, that the customer service workers at the train station, unhelpful and seriously unfriendly as they were right. So I'm grateful that my travel companions even joined in this search, knowing all of this. But I guess what pained me the most was how left alone I felt. From becoming aware in San Rafael that my travel companions just wanted to get on with their lives because obviously my problem was just in their way, to the fact that all throughout the trip, they seemed to have completely forgotten that I had lost my phone, that I was in this situation, something that would have been equally daunting to them had they been in my situation. At the end of the whole trip, when we got to our city and were saying our goodbyes, the girl whose phone I found turned and complimented me for how I had handled the situation. She concluded by adding that when my phone got missing, she quickly changed some settings on her phone so that finding her phone would be easier if it ever got missing. Then she wouldn't have to be in such a situation as I was. She said that. I don't know, under normal circumstances, such a move would be great advice on her part, and very much welcome if I had either found my phone or had gotten a new one by the time of that comment. But in that situation, her comment just felt like adding insult to injury. I low-key wished that she was the one who'd lost her phone. Retrospectively though, I did give her the benefit of the doubt because I must say, notwithstanding what I was thinking and how I was feeling during the entire trip, I probably played it cool since I didn't want to make anyone feel weird about showing the enjoyment of the time. So cool in fact that the crew thought that this whole thing wasn't such a big deal to me. I went out of my way to stress to them that losing that little rectangular piece of technology sure wasn't the end of the world, and that my backup had already saved the day. But I just might have been trying to convince myself that the situation wasn't as bad as my cat was trying to make it out to be. So to put it simply, my thoughts didn't match my actions. But one thing was for sure. From the moment I lost my phone, I couldn't fully enjoy that trip anymore. Yes, I engaged in conversation. Yes, I loved the sights and scenery. Yes, I enjoyed my time in that beautiful town that drew people in with its historic charm and achieved renown. But deep within me, there was something that felt like a blockage, almost physically stopping me from fully immersing myself into the adventure. I'm not sure how else to describe it. Maybe you have experienced something similar and know better how to put into words what goes on within oneself in such moments, and the wide gap between the thoughts versus words and actions one may have. And I know that day didn't simply slide by because despite the great time I had, now when I think of the trip to Saint-Tropez, I can't help but remember that this was where I lost my phone. The trip that had begun with so much anticipation and held such aspiration ended up creating an unpleasant memory and a life lesson that I still remember to this day. Reflecting on this happening sometime later, I realized some things. First of all, there was a misalignment between what I thought and what I said and did. I projected low-key nonchalance while secretly hoping my travel buddies would go all the way with looking for the phone with me, even if it meant tossing the journey. At that moment, I was convinced I'd do the same for them and couldn't help but feel that my fellow travelers were being selfish and dismissive. By looking at the situation from the misalignment angle, I realized I couldn't expect others to give the situation further consideration if I appeared to have moved on. But because I went out of my way to show everyone that my phone was just an electronic rectangle I didn't care much about, I probably helped create an atmosphere where the others thought that I had gone past the point where certain comments wouldn't hit. And to prove that I was fine after such comments were made, I didn't say anything, not even jokingly, though I was hurt. Secondly, because I felt I'd be more empathetic and help others in such a situation without being asked, I had too many expectations of how I thought my companion should or shouldn't act, that they should just have known, which of course led to disappointment. Human nature is human nature, so given the circumstances, I realized thinking back that contrary to my belief back then, I also probably would have done my best to help, but asking me to give up my trip may just have been too big of an ask. And even if I'd chosen to pass up the opportunity to go on the trip to help an almost stranger, it may have carried a bitter or regretful aftertaste, at least for a while. The biggest lesson for me, however, was learning that my feeling hurt didn't mean that the others had done something inherently wrong or unheard of. There was a lot of causation and action, and inaction of course, but I had to learn to understand the other side. But before you understand what I mean by the other side, you first need to know what I thought was my side of the story. You see, in my mind, I was the victim, the only inconvenienced party directly affected by the loss of my phone. I felt that I needed help and sympathy the most. In fact, I thought it was a given that the others would understand and intuitively take the actions that benefited me. After all, in my mind, that was only right, and I would have done that for them. I failed to understand that, especially from casual acquaintances, I just couldn't expect certain things and feel entitled to being treated in a particular way, because to put it bluntly, they owed me nothing. With my mindset, I had unwittingly set myself up for unnecessary sadness and disappointment, a situation the others weren't to feel bad about. After all, they weren't responsible for what was going through my head. But believe it or not, this seemingly trivial incident led me down an internal rabbit hole where I started to criticize and nitpick others' perceived nonchalance in some carefully cherry-picked situations and mourn how general kindness I showed other people was not extended to me when I needed it most. Which I realized was not true after my head had cleared, by the way. Anyway, in my mind, I lamented how good people are always paid back with evil, or at least with nonchalance, how they usually tend to go out of their way for others who almost never do the same for them. I would only grasp later on, after growing up a bit, not only how naive but audacious to expect people to go beyond and above just for me, even if I felt I'd do the same for them. The word here is the expectation. Because of course, in every relationship, there's always an element of give and take. But there's also a need for balance. If you're that friend who's always doing too much and always available every day, every time because you think that's what makes you likable, know that as long as you're willing to bend over backwards for others, some people may appreciate you. You may also unwittingly attract people who are takers, who take from you without giving anything in return because that's how they are wired. But once you're the one who needs help, know that people would mostly only go so far that they wouldn't be too inconvenienced, especially if the ties aren't that tight, as was the case with me. Thus, my friends, my inward expectation of more and more from my travel mates was self-entitlement at its finest. I hadn't yet comprehended that there was a thin line between expecting basic courtesy from any human in society to just assuming that everyone should jump in and help me in my time of trouble, regardless of the cost to them. You see, if in a different situation my guys couldn't be bothered to show concern or help me such, despite being able to, I may arguably have been right to wonder about the kind of people I was hanging out with. But they helped. They did what they could in that situation. And they also had a plan for the day. That's the point where I had to understand that their lives did not revolve around what I was going through. Well, that stung as it sank in. I recalled that something similar, or even worse, had happened some years prior during a previous semester abroad, this time in an Asian country. The lad with the loss, let's call him Matt, traveled with an acquaintance of mine I interacted with on a regular basis. Let's give him the name Jake. They also had their semester abroad in the same country as I did and decided to embark on a trip to Japan. Unfortunately, either before they arrived there or right afterward, Matt found out he'd lost his purse. His whole purse. It had everything from his bank cards, ID cards, and other documents needed abroad as well as in his home country. Losing such valuable documents, even in your home country where you speak the language and know the system, is more than just an inconvenience. So just imagine how daunting it must have been for him to lose all these cards and documents in a country where both he and his friend were visiting foreigners without any knowledge of the language or how things worked there. My acquaintance recounted later on how he helped Matt to the best of his ability, though at the point there was not much he could do. Even so, as he told the tale of this unwanted adventure, I could tell that he wasn't too happy with the undesired developments because he planned to explore Tokyo and environs, not spend the days contacting public officers, the police, and embassies, more or less aimlessly. Though he was glad he helped a friend in need, he sorrowfully mourned the time lost. But could anyone fault him for that? Hardly. You see, back then, even I remember hearing what happened and feeling so sorry for Matt. However, I also couldn't help but pity my acquaintance because had I been in his shoes, I would have helped out, but still probably, maybe low-key blamed the missing opportunity to explore a country on a whole new continent on the person whose situation made me miss it. I mean, when else could I have gotten the opportunity to repeat the botched trip under those same favorable conditions? I would probably have wished that I hadn't embarked on that journey with the person whose loss would have inconvenienced me so significantly. So yes, I did feel sorry for my pal Jake. He didn't cause the loss, and it's not like he refused to help or lacked empathy for the plight of his travel companion. It's just that this event impacted him in a way he couldn't influence, causing him to involuntarily throw away his plans. Plans he'd been looking forward to as a fixed part of his bucket list. Plans which were part of the reason he chose the Asian country in which we met as his semester abroad destination in the first place. So yes, Matt was the victim here, but Jake was collateral damage. The lesson here is, it is vital to acknowledge the other side and how our situation might negatively impact them. Some might be giving up a lot to do for us what we may consider insufficient if we only view the situation through the lens of a victim. Their efforts and attempt to assist may or may not even be fruitful, but that shouldn't be all that matters. Others may not care as much and may or may not do anything to help because your problem is not their problem and your matter is not theirs. They might just want to go on their way without any unnecessary disruptions, which may include you. In a case like that, there is no need to take offense because trust me, you'll be the only one suffering if you do. Someone who can't be bothered to help, even if it wouldn't cost them much, won't be bothered about your fragile feelings. So all in all, different people, close or not, may or may not go to different degrees to help us in our plight. This is okay, and this is human. Keeping this alone in mind could contribute greatly to our mental health by keeping us from feeling angry, aggrieved, entitled, disappointed in humanity, or anything else we don't need to be feeling. And what do you do if you're in a similar situation as my travel companions? Do keep in mind that it goes a long way to support as much as possible, or at least be empathetic to their situation, even if you may not be able to help. The last thing people already unnerved by the happenings to them may want to deal with is people rubbing into their noses how their problems and the consequences thereof are such an inconvenient bother. Because trust me, most people sense it if others consider them a bother. People who have no choice but to rely on you may grit their teeth as they rely on you, but people will always remember how you made them feel, especially if you hurt them. Years later, you may still be the person who lacked any sort of empathy or compassion when they needed help or even just a kind word. Putting yourself in their shoes to at least try to understand their actions and moods may really help with that, especially if you feel that you're being compromised in any way, big or small. I guess by now my point has been hammered home. It is important to keep in mind that when it comes to offering help or support, most people would choose comfort over convenience, especially when the other person's plight doesn't really affect them. Well, what do I say? That's not bad. It's just human. You'd probably do the same. However, in as much as it is important to grasp this, let both sides not forget basic humanity, empathy, and understanding in an ever more individualistic world where I and my are king. So this is it. Any thoughts or comments? What do you think of the stories and the lessons learned? Have you been in a similar situation and learned things which you'd like to share? Moreover, there are so many different versions of such stories where each detail added or removed, like the personalities of all parties involved, or the stakes at hand, may add some nuance or change the recommended course of action entirely. So do feel free to share your opinions with all of us in the comments. On that note, let me leave you with some questions to stimulate your thoughts. 1. Are there instances where because of something someone did or didn't do, your attitude towards people in certain situations changed? For instance, if you're very helpful and go out of your way to help everyone, but needed help that one time, only to find that others just didn't prioritize you or did as much as you think they should have, given that you'd have done much more for them than they were doing for you. Help they gladly receive and may even have come to expect, but help they wouldn't return. Such instances have the power to completely rewire your brain and cause you to take certain decisions, justified or not, based on that, quite frankly, painful experience. But in light of all that we've discussed, and conclusions you may have come to by yourself, how would you reflect on such events now if you do have such experiences? 2. Regardless of which side you are on, what more do you think we can do to understand the other side better? How do we show that we understand them better? I'm certain at different times you've been both an affected party of unfortunate circumstances, but also an unwitting participant in someone else's problems. How did you handle such situations in the past? How will you handle the same or similar situations should you encounter them in future? Which conversations do you think are needed to be had to ensure balance and less frustration on both sides? 3. Which situations can you recall where you harshly judged or criticized others, covertly or overtly, only to realize that you do the exact same thing you judged them for? In any case, take care and bye.